It starts with a whisper, a quiet street in Memphis, a long stretch of sidewalk that only a few people ever see at 4 in the morning. Streetlights flickering, a warm breeze brushing against parked cars, and the soft rhythm of feet hitting pavement. It's peaceful, safe, ordinary, the kind of morning where nothing should go wrong. But sometimes the scariest stories begin exactly like that, when everything feels normal enough for danger to blend in. She didn't know that someone else was awake too, someone who wasn't jogging, someone who wasn't trying to better himself, or clear his mind, or feel the calm of a half-asleep city. No, this person was watching, waiting, and he had already chosen what he was going to do. Before we go deeper, before the story twists into something darker, let me ask you something because it's important. When you go out alone, especially early in the morning or late at night, do you ever have that little voice in your head telling you to turn around, to look behind you, to pay attention? If you want more real stories that reveal what happens when people ignore that voice, or when danger ignores them, make sure you're subscribed. This is one you don't want to miss. Now, let's begin. Eliza Fletcher was doing what she always did. Running. She loved it. It was her daily ritual. A way to start the day before the city woke up and chaos took over. She had done this route dozens, maybe hundreds of times. Same neighborhood. Same sneakers. Same time. And on September 2nd, 2022, it should have been just another run. Her life was full. 2 children. A loving husband. A kindergarten classroom waiting for her that morning. She was fit, energetic, optimistic. One of those people whose presence brightens a room. And despite coming from a prominent Memphis family, she didn't flaunt anything. She wasn't the type who imagined herself in danger. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't careless. She just lived. But predators look for patterns. And the man watching her that morning wasn't thinking about her life, or her family, or her right to feel safe. He was thinking about opportunity. And he saw one walking toward him. The footage later recovered shows her running down Central Avenue. Alone. Confident. Focused. She doesn't see the SUV creeping out of frame. She doesn't hear the engine roll quietly. She doesn't know what's behind her. Here's a strange thing about fear. You often don't feel it until the moment it's too late to react. 1 second the world is normal. The next second everything changes. At 4:30 a.m., as Eliza jogged past a particular stretch of sidewalk, that world-shattering second happened. A dark GMC Terrain pulled up beside her. The door swung open, and in an instant, someone grabbed her. A struggle, a flash of movement. She fights. She tries to break free. But the man is strong, desperate, determined. He forces her into the vehicle. The door slams shut. The street becomes silent again. No scream heard. No witness close enough. Just a moment of violence swallowed by the night. And the SUV drives away. It takes only 24 seconds for someone's entire existence to be ripped away. 24 seconds that feel eternal for a victim, and vanish in the wind for the person who caused them. When Eliza didn't come home on time, the first ripple of fear started. It was subtle, concerned, not panicked. Her husband did what any partner would do. He called. He checked the routine. He waited for a moment. But minutes became too long, then too suspicious. And then something flipped inside him, the realization that something was wrong, deeply wrong. He reported her missing. That was the moment the calm surface of the story shattered. Police mobilized instantly. This wasn't a situation where someone might have wandered off. Eliza wasn't the type, and her disappearance at dawn wasn't something anyone could mistake for an accident. Very quickly, the city began to wake up to a nightmare. Flyers, alerts, officers combing streets, the University of Memphis issuing warnings. Her phone was found, a water bottle, and nearby, something else. Something small, but enough to raise every alarm bell inside investigators' heads. A pair of Champion slide sandals, left behind in the struggle. At first you might think sandals aren't important. People drop things all the time. But these weren't Eliza's. They belonged to someone else. Someone male. Someone careless. Someone violent. The kind of person who makes mistakes because he thinks no one will ever catch him. Crime scene investigators collected them immediately. They swabbed them, tested them. Within hours, a hit came back. A man named Cleotha Abston. And suddenly, this story snapped into focus. Because Abston wasn't some stranger with a clean record. No, his past revealed something chilling. 22 years earlier, he had already kidnapped someone. A lawyer. Forcing him into a trunk at gunpoint. A violent, premeditated attack. And now here he was again, free. Living quietly, blending into society. Until the moment he decided not to. The sandals were enough to track him down. Officers spotted him near his apartment, walking casually, as if the city wasn't tearing itself apart searching for a missing mother of two. They watched him, followed him, and soon moved in. But here's the part that sticks with you long after you hear it. He didn't run. He didn't act shocked. He didn't panic. He behaved like someone who had already accepted what he had done, and what would come next. Police arrested him. His SUV matched the one in the footage. Surveillance confirmed it. DNA confirmed it. Timing confirmed it. Everything tied him to the abduction. But one thing was missing. Eliza. And that is the part of the story that twists a knife into your chest. Because hope is a fragile thing. And as hours became a full day, then too, the hope of finding her alive started to flicker. Investigators, volunteers, family, strangers, everyone joined the search. Drones scanned woods. Officers walked through fields. People called in tips. A city united by desperation. Every hour mattered. Every lead mattered. And yet, the man who could answer the most important question wasn't saying anything. It's always terrifying to realize that someone is willing to do something horrific, and then pretend the world is normal again. But it's even more terrifying when the person refuses to reveal the truth. Where is she? What did he do? When? Why? Silence. He sat there. Expression empty. Words absent. No remorse. No urgency. Just quiet. Quiet can be one of the cruelest sounds in a case like this. Authorities searched everywhere. Roadsides. Abandoned buildings. Empty lots. They followed his movements before the crime. After the crime, they traced cell phone pings, vehicle paths, every possible step. And then, on the third day, they found something. A scent. A trace. A path leading away from the apartment complex where Abston lived. It wound through a long stretch of overgrown grass, down a hidden, narrow passage behind a vacant house. And there, the search ended. But that part of the story comes later. For now, understand this. Some crimes are random. Some are impulsive. But some are the result of a predator watching, waiting, and choosing the exact moment when the world isn't looking. That's what happened to Eliza Fletcher. And we're not even close to the darkest part yet. There's a moment in every missing person case when hope becomes a question instead of a promise. When the hours feel heavy. When each minute that passes feels like a door closing. And in Memphis, during those days, that feeling hung over the city like a weight no one could shake off. People began leaving their porch lights on at night. Joggers changed their routines. Parents held their children a little tighter. Eliza's disappearance wasn't just a crime. It was an intrusion into the ordinary. A reminder that danger doesn't need a reason. It only needs a moment. Inside the Memphis Police Department, investigators were piecing together Abston's movements. His phone told a story even he wouldn't speak. A digital trail. A set of coordinates tracing where he had been before and after the abduction. They followed it like breadcrumbs, hoping one of them would lead to her. But time is cruel in cases like these. Every minute that passed made the truth feel heavier. Back at home, her family waited. They didn't sleep. They didn't rest. They paced through rooms where she should have been. They called her phone again and again even though they knew she wouldn't answer. Because sometimes hope isn't logical. Sometimes it's just what keeps you from collapsing. Eliza was a mother, a teacher, someone whose entire life revolved around nurturing, helping, building. And now, those same people who depended on her were left with nothing but silence. Meanwhile, volunteers started forming search teams. They combed through parks, rivers, wooded areas, drainage ditches. anywhere someone could hide something they didn't want found. The community's response was overwhelming, but underneath it all was a chilling thought. If she was alive, she was running out of time. Surveillance footage played through investigators' heads like a loop they couldn't escape. The SUV, the struggle, the speed at which it all happened. That single pair of sandals. Evidence was adding up, but no piece of it told them where she was now. As night fell on the second day, the city lights reflected off empty streets. The same streets she had run through. The same streets that now felt haunted. Detectives revisited the crime scene. They crouched near the sidewalk where she was pulled into the vehicle. They imagined the struggle. They pictured the desperation. They tried to understand what happened second by second. They didn't say it out loud, but each one of them knew the odds. And yet, they still searched. The digital forensics team pulled Abston's records again. They analyzed footage from convenience stores, gas stations, traffic lights. They identified the clothes he wore that morning. They tracked his vehicle's path, following it from the abduction point all the way across town. And that's when they saw something. A frame of video, just a few seconds long. A dark SUV pulling into a parking lot near his brother's home just after the time Eliza was taken. What caught their attention wasn't just the vehicle, it was the way he got out of it. The way he moved. His shirt was crumpled, like someone had grabbed it. His behavior was frantic, like he was in a hurry to hide something. Then he disappeared into an apartment for more than an hour. When he finally stepped out again, something about him had changed. His clothes, his demeanor, his urgency, all of it pointed to a chilling conclusion. Something had happened inside that SUV. Investigators didn't stop. They pulled additional footage. More angles, more times, more details. They found the SUV again at a different location later that morning. Parked, unmoving, as if he was trying to decide what to do next. People always wonder why criminals stay close to the scene, why they linger, why they act normal. But the truth is, not all predators think ahead. Some act on impulse, and some believe they're too clever to be caught. It's a dangerous combination. Police obtained a search warrant for Abston's apartment. What they found inside felt like another punch to the chest. Cleaning supplies, freshly washed clothing, the faint smell of bleach, but no sign of her. And that was the moment investigators realized something terrifying. If they didn't find her soon, they weren't going to find her alive. Meanwhile, the community clung to hope. Social media exploded with pleas, photos, updates. Thousands shared her face, her smile, her story. Strangers who had never met her felt a connection. But the internet also shared something else, a rising sense of fear. Because if someone like her, running in her own neighborhood at sunrise, could be taken so easily, who wasn't vulnerable? The search intensified. Police used drones, dogs, specialized teams. They scoured abandoned buildings, wooded patches of land, isolated alleys. Every time they approached a new area, hearts pounded. Every time they found nothing, those hearts cracked a little more. Detectives returned to Abston's brother's apartment complex. They canvassed the area again, knocked on doors, searched dumpsters, interviewed neighbors. One witness reported seeing Abston just hours after the abduction. He described Abston as acting strangely, cleaning out his vehicle. Another noticed him washing clothes in a sink. Behavior that screams guilt, if you know what you're looking for. As day 3 approached, hope was thinning. And then came the turning point. A K-9 unit picked up a scent near a vacant house in South Memphis. Not a house people lived in, one people avoided. Overgrown grass, boarded windows, a place where life had stopped long ago. It wasn't the kind of area a mother of 2 would ever be. The dog pulled hard in that direction. Investigators followed. Slowly, quietly, hearts heavy and breaths short. The path behind the house showed signs of movement. Crushed grass, disturbed soil, a discarded item half buried beneath weeds. It wasn't her. But it was hers. Investigators radioed immediately. More units arrived. Officers spread out, forming a silent line moving toward the back of the property. One officer stopped. His flashlight hovered over something partially hidden behind a fallen branch. He stepped closer. He knew even before he lifted the radio to his mouth. They had found her. The search ended. The hope collapsed. And a city broke. News spread fast. Too fast. People who had been following the case felt the shock ripple through them like a punch. Strangers cried. Volunteers stopped in their tracks. The entire city went quiet. There is something uniquely heartbreaking about a discovered body in a missing person case. It means the worst fears weren't just possible, they were real. All those prayers, all those nights waiting, all those desperate attempts to outrun reality, ended in one awful moment. But for investigators, the job wasn't finished. Now they needed answers. Real answers. Answers that would stand up in a courtroom. Answers that would explain, to the extent that evil can be explained, how this happened and why. The medical examiner confirmed what everyone feared. She had been killed. The details were horrifying, violent, unnecessary. And investigators realized something even more haunting. Nothing about the crime was accidental. Nothing was random. Abston didn't just panic. He didn't stumble into this. He chose it. Meanwhile, Abston remained expressionless after his arrest. Hearing the charges, kidnapping, tampering with evidence, and soon after, first-degree murder, didn't faze him. He barely looked up. His face didn't move. No remorse. No fear. Just emptiness. And emptiness can be its own kind of evil. The community demanded justice. Family members collapsed into each other's arms outside the courthouse. Her students left drawings. Her fellow teachers placed flowers and handwritten notes on her classroom door. Joggers who had shared her routine ran with purple ribbons tied around their arms. A city mourned someone who gave so much and deserved so much more. But the story wasn't over. The discovery of her body strengthened the case, but it also raised more questions. What exactly happened between the moment she was forced into that SUV and the moment her body was left behind that house? What was Abston thinking? Did he plan it? Was it spontaneous? Was there something in his past that hinted at this darkness? Investigators started peeling back layers of his life. His childhood, his previous crimes, his behavior in prison, his associations. And what they found was disturbing. Patterns of violence, manipulation, and unpredictability. A man who had already committed a violent kidnapping decades earlier. A man who was released and given another chance at life. A chance he used to take someone else's. But even with all the evidence, something about the case didn't sit right with people. Felt too brutal, too sudden, too absolute. How could someone who had been free for so long erupt without warning? Why that day? Why her? Why there? Some crimes have motives. Some have explanations. This one felt like a collision between opportunity and evil. And that's what makes it so terrifying. Because it means it could happen to anyone. Investigators prepared the final stages of their case. Prosecutors began building the narrative that would be presented in court. The charges were stacking. The evidence was mounting. And the picture of what truly happened that morning was becoming clearer. But there was still more to unravel. Because after a case like this, after a city is shaken and a family is shattered, what comes next is just as important as what happened before. When detectives finally closed the crime scene behind the vacant house, they stepped back into a world that had changed. A world where one woman's morning run had become a symbol of fear, fragility, and the terrible unpredictability of human nature. But this part of the story, the aftermath, is where the emotional weight settles in. This is where the reality of what happened sinks into the bones of a community. Because when a crime ends, the consequences don't. Word spread from neighbor to neighbor, from text message to phone call, until it reached every corner of Memphis. People didn't speak loudly. They whispered. They shook their heads. They stared at the ground because saying it out loud made it hurt more. The unimaginable was now undeniable. And for her family, there are no words. There never are. Grief like that doesn't come rushing in. It seeps into rooms. It clings to walls. It lives in the silence of a house where someone should still be laughing, teaching her children, planning the day, or walking through the door. But even through heartbreak, the world keeps moving. Police finalize reports. Prosecutors gather evidence. Court dates are scheduled. Cameras set up outside the courthouse. News anchors prepare statements. The story shifts from a frantic search into a relentless pursuit of justice. Meanwhile, the suspect sits in jail, quiet, detached, as if he is watching someone else's life fall apart, not the one he ruined. People wonder if he feels anything: remorse, guilt, regret. But his face never reveals even a crack of emotion. Some men hide it. Some simply don't have it. Investigators pull everything: DNA, phone records, vehicle tracking, surveillance timelines. Every fragment is compared, cataloged, placed into a puzzle that leads to a single conclusion. The man who took Eliza was responsible for every horrifying moment that followed. And there was no doubt. But as prosecutors prepare for trial, the city tries to understand. And one question keeps resurfacing: why? Why her? Why that morning? Why that way? People dig into the suspect's past. They learn about the kidnapping he committed as a teenager, forcing a lawyer into a trunk at gunpoint. A violent act from decades earlier, one for which he had served a long sentence before being released. But the older case didn't explain this one. Not fully. Painted him as dangerous, yes. Capable, yes. But it didn't answer the question of what snapped inside him that September morning. Some crimes make sense with motive. This one didn't. This was about opportunity, control, and the kind of darkness that doesn't need a reason. The city held a vigil. Thousands gathered with candles, standing shoulder to shoulder, many of them strangers bound by sorrow. People prayed. Some cried quietly. Some didn't speak at all. But one thing was clear: they felt her loss deeply, even if they had never met her. Stories emerged about who she was: a beloved teacher, a devoted mom, someone who radiated warmth, kindness, and genuine care. The kind of person you don't expect to become the center of a tragedy. And maybe that's why it haunted people so much. Because if someone like her, doing something so innocent, so routine, could be taken, then safety felt like an illusion. In the courtroom, the details were laid bare. Every second of that morning reconstructed. Every movement of the suspect's vehicle analyzed. Every scrap of evidence presented. The sandals, the surveillance frames, the phone pings, the eyewitness accounts, the frantic cleaning afterward. Piece by piece, the timeline of horror became undeniable. Prosecutors described how quickly it all happened. How she fought. How she resisted. How even after the abduction, the suspect's actions revealed planning. Washing clothes, cleaning the SUV, trying to erase what he'd done. But there's one thing criminals always forget. You can try to erase evidence, but you can't erase truth. And the truth was suffocating. Journalists reported on every update. The trial became national news. People across the country watched, shaken by the brutality and randomness of the crime. Social media was filled with outrage, heartbreak, and disbelief. And through it all, the suspect remained distant, as if he was a spectator rather than the cause. For the family, every day in court was a wound reopened. Hearing details no one should ever have to hear. Seeing the person responsible sitting only feet away. Knowing nothing could bring her back. Justice in cases like these is not a victory. It's a necessity. But it never replaces what was taken. Psychologists and criminologists began analyzing the case, trying to understand what makes someone capable of such violence. Some pointed to his childhood, marked by instability and delinquency. Others focused on his earlier kidnapping, how someone who once committed such a crime might always be capable of repeating it. But explanations never soften horrors. They only categorize them. As the trial developed, more evidence surfaced. Witnesses spoke. Detectives testified. The timeline became crystal clear. He had seen her running. He had watched her. And in that moment, he decided to act. It wasn't fate. It wasn't confusion. It was choice. A deliberate, predatory choice. And that is what chilled people to their core. Because you can protect yourself from accidents. You can avoid dangerous places. You can take precautions. But you cannot prepare for someone else's sudden decision to do something evil. When the guilty verdict came, there was no celebration. Only a quiet sense of finality. Justice was done. But justice doesn't bring peace. Not really. It just closes a chapter that never should have been written. Eliza's family released statements. They thanked the community. They spoke about forgiveness, faith, and the depth of their loss. They didn't lash out. They didn't show bitterness. They showed strength. The kind of strength most people never have to summon. Her students left flowers at the school gate. Parents hugged their children a little tighter during drop-off. Teachers walked the halls softly, feeling the presence of someone who had dedicated her life to shaping little minds. Her absence echoed. People in the neighborhood changed their routines. Joggers found running partners. Some switched to daylight hours. Others carried alarms or pepper spray. Not out of paranoia, out of a new understanding of how fragile life can be. The house where her body was found eventually became a place people avoided. Not because it was haunted, but because it was a reminder. A reminder of innocence lost. A reminder of how close danger had been. A reminder no one wanted, but no one could forget. In the months that followed, the case led to conversations about parole reform, early morning safety, and women's vulnerability during exercise. Politicians debated. Activists organized. Communities demanded change. And even though laws moved slowly, the conversation never died. Her story became more than a tragedy. It became a call for awareness, protection, and accountability. Some stories fade with time. This one didn't. It lingered, because it struck at the core of something universal. The desire to feel safe in your own routine. In the end, the man responsible was locked away, possibly for the rest of his life. But the real impact of his actions stretched far beyond himself. It rippled through families, classrooms, neighborhoods, and hearts. Eliza's life mattered. Her memory mattered. And even though her story ended in the darkest way, the light she brought to the world didn't disappear. People remembered her smile, her warmth, the way she lifted others. Not the way her life ended, but the way she lived. A mother, a teacher, a runner, a woman who deserved so much more. And if there's one thing this story leaves behind, it's this: safety isn't guaranteed. Good people sometimes meet evil in the most ordinary moments. And the world can change in a single second. But courage can echo louder than fear. Communities can rise stronger than tragedy. And the memories of those taken too soon can light the path forward. But the reminder stays with you. Be aware. Be cautious. Be present. Not because fear should control your life, but because awareness might just save it. If this story impacted you the way it did so many others, consider subscribing for more real-life cases that deserve to be remembered. Your support helps these stories reach more people, and it helps us continue creating deeper investigations like this one. Stay safe, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next video. Cinematic Street at 4 a.m. A lone female runner lit by a single street lamp. In the background, an SUV emerging. High contrast, dramatic lighting, deep shadows, tense atmosphere, realistic style, true crime aesthetic.